Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to this talk where I'll tell you about Xamlify, a tool that lets me convert my Figma designs into XAML code for .NET MAUI applications in just seconds. My name is Hector Perez. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and you can follow or contact me on my social media accounts shown on screen. The general purpose of Xamlify is to enable you to create application screens or Figma designs from scratch and convert them into XAML code in just 10 minutes. I know this might sound ambitious, but it's achievable. Let's move on to a demonstration of the tool. So what I'm going to do is go to Figma. This is the Figma application. And during Xamlify's development, I created several designs for testing purposes. I studied the tool's possibilities extensively. And just this year, Figma announced AI-powered features to assist designers in their work. One of these tools is the one that we have at the bottom, which is named First Draft. It's this option that we see here. I'm going to click in this option. And basically, what this tool does is that we are prompted to enter a description of a design or screen that we want to create using Figma's AI. A major advantage of the designs created by this AI is that it follows best practices for responsive designs. So with this in mind, I'm going to enter a prompt, a dashboard of a restaurant application. It's the one that you can see on the screen. I'm going to click on this blue button that says Make It. And basically, we have to wait a few seconds. And voila, the design is starting generating automatically, creating a phenomenal layout, including icons and images that might take hours to create if you're not a designer. We have to wait a few seconds. The reality is that this is a really awesome AI application. We can see that all the elements are generated in real time. We have some sort of controls, for example, a search control. We have multiple collections. We even have the different images that are basically aligned to the topic of your application. In this particular case, because my application is about restaurants, all the images are food related. When the design has been created, we can see that at the bottom, we have an option to specify a different theme for the application. We can apply, for example, a green theme for this application that change all the layout of the Figma application, of the Figma design. We can change it to a blue theme. We can change to another. We have several themes to apply. I'm going to stick with this dark theme that looks pretty awesome. And even if we want to make some changes to the application, to this design, we can do it clicking on this button that says Make Changes. You can specify a new prompt to change a particular item of the design. And basically, you can iterate through all the designs that you are creating, performing or improving the design that you are generating. For this particular case, I'm going to stop the designing phase because I think that this design is very, very cool. Okay, once the screen is created, we can easily change the design's colors, as we saw earlier. But looking at the hierarchical tree, we have it at the left. We can see that several elements or several containers or layouts have a particular attribute called auto layout. This feature, auto layout, allows dynamic and responsive designs that automatically adjust the content and maintain consistent distribution. How can we test this? Well, we can select the main layout that we have as part of the Figma design. We can enlarge this design and basically notice how the elements automatically adjust to fit the new layout, as we can see on the screen. This is going to serve us in the next demonstration. Okay, with that, we've completed the first part. The second part involves removing unnecessary elements from the design. We have some elements that we can remove, for example, this header navigation bar. We don't need that. And we are also going to remove this bottom tab that we can see here so that we can extract only the main information, the main design of this Figma design file. And we only want this information. If we return to the hierarchical tree, we can examine it. We see that we have some elements that are hidden. This is a common pattern when we create designs using this Figma's AI. Another common pattern is that for some icons, The icons are divided into different layers as well. And there are some, basically some patterns that we don't want when we export the design to XAML code. To prepare the file for the Xamlify conversion, I've created a free plugin available in the community plugins called Xamlify, which currently contains only 2 tools, but I plan to improve in the future. So I'm going to open this plugin. You can see this very simple plugin. The first option, let me remove invisible objects. So I'm going to apply this operation, and all the invisible objects have been removed, and then I'm going to flatten the file. So there were found 14 nodes that were flattened. Okay, we have prepared our file to be exported. And to export this file to Xamlify, what I'm going to do is right-click on the name of the file. I'm going to copy the link. If you are on the browser, you can easily basically obtain the URL of the file and get the file ID, which is the one that you can see on the screen. It's after the design word. I'm going to copy this ID. And after that, I'm going to go to Xamlify. That is the tool that I built. It's the one that we can see here. Previously, I have prepared this tool because I have to enter the Figma access token. So I have basically saved the access token for access the account. And then I paste the Figma file ID as part of this tool. The tool is hosted on Xamlify.net. And basically, we have several options that I plan to increase with the time. We have 2 options. The first one is the option that says is flexible design. This option is useful when you have a design that basically don't apply the auto layout capabilities, because it tries to remove all the restrictions, all the constraints. For example, when you have a fixed width, you can remove this fixed width so that it tries to convert the design, the Figma design, to a responsive design. And the second option is auto-detect XAML elements, which basically lets you to detect buttons, entries, labels, etc. as part of your design, and get all the generated controls in XAML code. I plan to enhance it to recognize several controls, for example, to recognize third-party controls, for example, the Telerik controls. And basically, what I have done here is enter the Figma file ID. I'm going to click on Generate. This is going to start the process to generate basically the source code. Okay, it's generating the code. And you can see that in a few seconds, you are going to get the XAML code. It is a really fast conversion. I really love how fast the conversion is. We have all the XAML code here. I'm going to copy this code. Okay, the code was copied to clipboard. I'm going to open here a clean project. You can see that the emulator shows a blank page. So I'm going to paste this code. I'm going to save the changes. And if I return to the emulator, you can see that we have a usable code, we have a clean code, we have a free error code. And if we place this design of the emulator side by side with the original Figma design, you can see that it is almost identical. Okay, I'm going to stop this application because I want to change the emulator. I'm going to test this code on a tablet emulator to see how it performs. So I have here the tablet emulator. Let's give it a few seconds. Okay, and after a few seconds, we can see that we have basically a responsive design because we used auto layout features of Figma. We can see that we have a really cool design, a really beautiful design that basically simulates or mimics the design that we have on Figma. So I love this conversion. I hope that you love too. Okay, with this demonstration, I'm going to return to the slides. And we did whole conversion from scratch in only 10 minutes. Okay, the example I've shown works correctly because .NET 9 is the best version for working with Xamlify. Why do I say that? Well, because throughout Xamlify's development, I often encountered the following scenario. I had a design like the one shown on the screen with many icons and elements scattered across different parts. When testing conversions using .NET 8, I had common errors like those you see on screen. This might make Xamlify users think the tool had some conversion flaw. However, when running the same XAML code with .NET 9, we see a design almost identical to the Figma design. Now, I want to tell you about my journey creating Xamlify. It all started when I began seeing information about OpenAI models that could complete text. Seeing those demonstrations really blew my mind. But there was one model that caught my attention even more, the Codex model. Being able to create code based on an instruction literally blew my mind, and I'm sure many of you felt the same way. From then on, I set myself a personal challenge to create a tool that would allow me to create code designs for my mobile applications, which at the time were Xamarin-based. I did many experiments like the one you can see on the screen, where I took examples of designs made in HTML and CSS, extracted the source code from the example, input it as code sections in the OpenAI playground, and gave instructions to create XAML code. The results were very surprising at the time, but honestly, they weren't very similar to the original. We can see the result on the screen in a few seconds. Okay, we have here a side-by-side comparison between the design, the original design, and the code that was generated by the models in that time. Next, I carried out another experiment in which I defined the hierarchy of a control along with its name to be able to know which control I was working with. This is an example of the graphical interface that I did. And then I defined the columns and rows of the container to try to simulate the rows and columns of a grid layout. This is the example of a vertical stack layout type layout definition, where I defined 4 rows, one for each control. This allowed me to achieve consistency both in the alignment of the containers and in the distribution of the internal controls. This is another slightly more complex example. However, there was a small problem. The definition of rows and columns was a tedious process and didn't always provide the best results when it came to distribution. Due to work commitments, I put the project aside. Until a few years later, I dedicated myself to creating several YouTube tutorials, which were UI creation challenges with .NET MAUI, which rekindled the spark to create the tool capable of converting designs into code. While researching if there was any tool capable of performing this task, I found 2 very interesting projects, from Figma to .NET MAUI Graphics by Javier Suarez and Uno Platform for Figma. However, these projects' approaches didn't meet my objectives, so I again launched into developing Xamlify. This time, the challenge was to enable developers to quickly create reusable components and application screens as fast as possible. As with any project, choosing the best technology stack is essential, and in my case, as a faithful .NET enthusiast, I choose Blazor as the development platform, Microsoft Azure for hosting the project, and Azure OpenAI to add intelligent capabilities to the application, such as control recognition. This time, I decided to create something that could be used without needing to define complex grids or being tied to using pre-created components. In other words, allowing greater design freedom. To achieve this, I discovered that both the Figma tree and the XAML tree must match as closely as possible to achieve similar designs. This sounds very simple, but it has its complexities. If you want to know how Xamlify works internally, I can tell you that everything starts with the Figma API, which is free and you can use right after creating your Figma account. Let's move on to a quick demonstration of how to start a project similar to Xamlify. So what I'm going to do is go to Postman. Here we have this tool, this awesome tool. And basically what I'm doing here in Postman is that I am defining this endpoint, this Figma endpoint, which we can query to get the information of a document, of a Figma document. Basically, we have to set the file ID that we want to retrieve the information, which in this case is this ID that you see on the screen. And also we need to set the Figma access token, which is this one that we can see here. With that, I'm going to click on the send button. And this returns all the information about the different nodes that we have in the design. I'm going to take this opportunity to show you the design that we are going to use to the demonstration. Okay, let me close these windows. Let me search for it. Lost it. Okay, here we have it. Okay, this is a separate account of what I shown you earlier. And basically, here we have this really simple design. I have one page, one single page. We have two layers, one layer for a text element, and we have a rectangle here also as part of the design. So when we make this HTTP request, we basically obtain all the information. We get, for example, the colors of the different elements, the fields of the elements, the type, the effects, the bounding boxes, the corner radius, etc. We get a lot of information to create an application, a cool application. So the next step that we have to do, I'm going to go to Visual Studio, to another project that I have here. And basically, this is a Blazor project. It tries to simulate Xamlify. Its name, Xamlify.simplified version. So we have here a lot of errors because we haven't defined the variables needed to use basically to make the connection to the API, to the Figma API. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to define that variables. The first one is a property named output that basically is going to serve to show to the user the final XAML code generated, the generated code. We also are defining here a field named access token, which is the access token that we saw on the Postman example. We also define the file ID, which is the file of this particular file that we have here. After that, what we need to do is connect to the Figma API. How do we do that? Well, we have two ways. The first way and the complex way is basically you can retrieve all the information from the Figma API, create your models, create your helper classes, create your different classes to perform different conversions. Or the second way is that you can use this project named Figma Sharp that basically lets you create apps with Figma. It has all the necessary logic to create Figma-based applications connected with C#. So I'm going to return to this project. And basically what I have done is basically I have added these two projects, Figma Sharp and Figma Sharp.views, which are necessary to basically perform this sort of operations. As part of these operations, it let me connect to the Figma service. For that, I'm going to create a method named generateCode, in which I basically define a Figma API that is going to let me to connect to the external service, to the Figma service. Then I create a new instance of the Figma file query. And basically here I'm passing the file ID and the access token. This is going to retrieve a Figma file query. A Figma file query basically is going to serve us to then get the file async as we see on the screen, passing this querying. And this get file async is going to return us a Figma file response, which is basically the whole document that you can see here. If you have more than one page, this particular operation is going to retrieve all the pages inside this particular document. After we have done that, we have to retrieve the specific page that we want to process. In my case, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to define a variable named main, which I'm going to assign file.document.children.first_default. With this operation, what I am doing is basically retrieving this first page that we see on the screen. After that, I want to retrieve all the elements, all the whole elements of this particular page. How do we do that? Well, what I'm going to do is declare a variable named children, which is equal to main.children.toList. I'm using toList because I'm going to create then a method that accepts a list of the children that we obtain. Okay, the next step is to process the nodes and iterate through them. How do we do that? Well, I'm going to paste another method. And this method is named process nodes. It's an async operation, and we receive a list of Figma nodes. A Figma node is basically a representation of any element on your design. It can be, for example, a It can be a group, it can be a frame, it can be a text element, etc. We are basically going to process each of the different nodes inside this particular page. I'm going to call this method through await process nodes, passing the children that we obtain. And the next step is basically obtain the properties of the nodes. In this particular example, I'm just getting the background of the rectangle and some text properties. So what I'm going to do is replace this process nodes method, and you have here this particular method. I'm going to explain it. Basically, what we are doing is defining a string builder named XAML builder. This is because we want to extract all the properties of the different nodes, and we are going to translate the properties into a text readable version so that we can pass finally to an LLM to generate the XAML code. That is why we need this XAML builder, because we can, for example, translate the objects into a JSON format. We can save as JSON format, but if we do that, we are going to pass to the LLM a lot of different properties that doesn't really matter. So what we're going to do is process each one of the nodes, and we're going to perform different comparisons. For example, if a node is a rectangle vector, which is the equivalent that if we have a rectangle like the one we see here, so we're going to perform some operations. In first place, we're going to append a line to the XAML builder. We're going to define the element type is equals to border. We are going to ask if this Figma rectangle has some fields, and in the case that it is greater than 0, we're going to extract that particular color, which is the background color of the element. Then, because this field color is of the type Figma sharp.color, it doesn't. We have to transform it to a different type of data. In this particular case, it's going to be a text string, which is going to be called hex value. Here we perform an operation to extract or to get the hexadecimal value from this particular color. And finally, we are going to append to the XAML builder the property background color named hex value. Note that here I'm using a hyphen. This is for differentiate the element type from all the properties of the particular node. Then we perform a comparison between the node and if the node is of Figma text type, we are going to perform a different operation, a different set of operations. In first place, I'm going to append to the XAML builder that this is a text. Then I'm going to append the text property, which we can obtain from Figma text.characters. Then we are going to get the particular style, which has all the properties like the bold property, like the italic property, etc. I'm using these attributes variable or particular property to get the font family. We can extract the attributes.font family and append this value to the XAML builder. Then we want to obtain the particular text color through this line, which is Figma text.fields.color. And again, we are basically performing a conversion to a hexadecimal value. And finally, we append this particular text color to the XAML builder. Okay, we have this set of operations ready. I can start the application. Okay, here we have the application. I'm going to go to the XAML code. I'm going to generate code. And we can see that as part of the output, we have this information. We have that it is an element type border. It has a background color. The other element is a text element with more information about the control. Okay, we are ready to perform the next step, which is using artificial intelligence to basically create the XAML code. How do we do that? Well, I have prepared here a code snippet named generate XAML. Okay, this particular code or this particular method is going to take an string, which is this input that we received or that we generate earlier on this method. Let me call this method. Okay, and what we are going to do here is get the endpoint and the API key because I'm using Azure OpenAI to this particular example. I'm going to define a client. I'm using the Microsoft.extensions.ai NuGet package for creating an Azure OpenAI client, passing the URI, the API key credential, and creating a chat client with the model ID GPT-4o Mini, which I created earlier. And finally, I use this method complete async with a particular prompt that basically let me convert the code in a valid XAML code for a .NET MAUI application. Okay, here I have a very descriptive prompt. And finally, the answer that I received from this service is assigning to the output property. I'm going to start this example again. Okay, I'm going to go to the XAML code, generate code. Okay, let's continue the breakpoint. Okay, on this occasion, you can see that we get this XAML code that we obtained from the Figma file. We can test it really quickly. I'm going to paste this code into this XAML file. You can see that it is a valid file, and the output is the one that you can see here that is very similar to the Figma document. And this is not the Figma, this is a Figma document, sorry. You can see that it is very similar. We can perform other operations to get other properties. Okay, I'm going to return to the slides really quickly. And that's because some of the new features I'm working on include an extension that allows extracting XAML code directly from Visual Studio, converting paths into font icons, and making it easy to generate XAML components. With all that said, I invite you to experience the power of .NET 9 today. Thank you to the .NET Conf team for providing this platform, and to all of you for joining me in this session. Okay.
Hector, you absolutely blew my mind. I am speechless, to say the least, of what is possible. So in like 30 minutes, you took us from AI-generated Figma designs, and you're bringing it into a native app that works seamlessly between mobile and desktop with high fidelity, one-on-one between the Figma designs and what you're producing. That is unbelievable work. So, well done, well done. So let's take a look at our chat room here for just a second. I'm going to bring down your desktop.
Okay.
It is good to see that our Spanish-speaking friends are here to support you. Good to see you all. And people are loving what you have done. Excellent app, excellent. Now, I mean, this thing, what you're trying to do is intrinsically very difficult. Like if you have designer friends, and if we are lucky enough to work in a team where you have designers and they create these amazing layouts, amazing designers, and then there's always that gap, because we developers try to take that design and create layouts and create containers and fonts and icons, and it's never quite the same. But here, you're actually using AI to generate some of the XAML as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think that it sounds a really easy process, but it is really complex process.
I bet.
Yeah, it took me a lot of years to achieve this.
Yeah, and this is so difficult because we have always, like, coming from the Xamarin days and now into .NET MAUI, we have always wanted that design time experience, but it's difficult to pull off, which is why you have so many other things like live, visual trees and previewers, but it's not the true design time experience. But here, you can truly start from Figma and bring your designs with high fidelity into a Xamarin or into a .NET MAUI app, which is amazing. So a few more comments here. The web-based nature of Xamlify, is that by design?
I started with a .NET MAUI application, and then I ported it to a Blazor WebAssembly application. Yeah, it was because it is more accessible. And I think that it's the best solution for sharing it with other people.
Yeah. Now, our friend Sergey here had a few more questions. So we are taking a Figma, style and converting XAML out of it, getting XAML out of it. Could it go both ways? Like, could it replace what we are missing in terms of inside of VS Code or Visual Studio? What are your thoughts?
Right now, I only can create the XAML code from the Figma design. That was some interesting question, because I thought that a solution, because having some sort type of server that is synchronizing both of the files, but right now it don't have that functionality. I'm planning to making a plugin that can generate all the code from the Visual Studio environment, so that you don't have to go to another external tool, and you can perform all the operations inside Visual Studio.
Yeah, baby steps. And also, as a follow-up question, Sergey was also asking, could I go directly online from Figma tool, or does it need to be a file?
Okay, I know what he are questioning. The thing is that the API only lets you to process files. It is some sort type of read-only design, this read-only file type. So you can perform operations inside the Figma file. But as I said before, I have a plugin which I can basically connect to the API that is using the Xamlify application and generate some sort of modifications inside the file so that it does only convert files, but modifies the Figma files.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. So many nice, compliments to what you are doing. This is really awesome because when you think about Figma, when you look at some of the design stories, it all seems a little unfair for native developers. Like it's all very geared towards web developers. Like you want to take a Figma design and make a Blazor app or an Angular app or a React app. That's doable, but we always miss the step of bringing it into a native .NET desktop or a mobile app. But here you are. So that's really good job. Yeah. Let's see. A few more questions here. Chat room is very active, and we love all of your questions. You showed off a little bit of AI where you're calling into, and you're actually using Microsoft Extensions AI, which is brand new. So good job on that. Between like the .NET 9 bits, between like release candidate 1, release candidate 2, and now we have GA. Not a whole lot has changed. There's a lot of performance tuning. So did you have to update your model to learn new things as .NET 9 progressed?
One thing that you can do with the models, I made a lot of experimentations. And one thing that I did in some time ago was to perform some type of adding as part of the context, all the new information from the frameworks. And even I can tell to the model, okay, I want that you treat, for example, this color as a hexadecimal value, just as a hexadecimal value. Do not use RGB conversion, for example, and you can limit in that way what the model has to have to perform when making the conversion of the file. So you can basically set that context to the model, and the model is going to perform based on that context.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, I can ask so many questions, Hector. Like I am just so excited to try this out. Now, let me just ask one last one here. So if you are choosing the auto layout that you showed, like once Figma comes up with the design, how do you tell the AI model to say use one type of XAML layout? Like, is it a grid or is it rows and columns? Is it vertical or horizontal layout? Like, do you tweak the layouts based on that setting?
Yeah, definitely. I take into account the type of the layout, because in Figma with auto layout, you have a set of different properties of different parameters that you can retrieve, for example, to indicate that there is a padding between all the elements, that there is a gap between, for example, the margin or the padding. And I get all that information to basically determine which type of layout I have to create. Because remember, the tool don't only works on auto layout, but also if you don't have auto layout, it can detect or can create different grid, columns, rows for your design. And basically that was because creating a tool that lets you to create the fixed elements with the specific widths and height, it wasn't very functional. So I decided to take a big challenge to create the convenient layout in runtime to basically determine the type of layout that you have to use to create a one-to-one comparison designs.
Yeah. We are so glad that you came back and worked on Xamlify, and this is just fantastic, as Chatroom is saying. Sergey chimed in to say amazing work, and we all hope that you keep evolving this. You make it more and more productive. We love all the new ideas that you have to make it into an extension. So keep working, and we just love it all. So thank you so much for enabling .NET MAUI developers, like, we are oftentimes, not the best when it comes to designers. We don't have access to a designer, but Figma gets us started from a very good point, and now we can bring that high fidelity designs into our .NET MAUI apps and .NET apps. So absolutely awesome. So thank you so much, Hector. I know it's late night for you, so thank you so much for your time and all your work.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you to all the audience. Thank you to all the people that are here. Thank you to the team for this fantastic event.